What I'm about to show you is probably one of the coolest things I have ever done. Welcome to my living room that I converted into a climate-controlled indoor farm that houses 7 aeroponic towers, 4 microgreen growing racks, and is capable of growing over 300 pounds of food every 30 to 45 days in under 175 square feet. You know, sometime in the past, I realized I wanted to grow at least some of my own food. And I was also intrigued by the idea of making money growing food. But I felt held back because one, I have little to no land, I'm short on time and have no knowledge or experience. But that changed when I discovered indoor farming, which has not just been a way to source fresh greens that my family eats from, but it's also turning into a profitable business. And might I add, I didn't just want a side hustle, I needed some side serenity, all right? I needed some peace, and building this and growing in this room has been therapeutic for me. I started with just a small rack in the corner of my dining room growing microgreens. It was small, it was simple, and it taught me the basic things that I'm gonna share with you now, as well as exactly how I built this grow room from beginning to end. I also just built another small grow room in the same house. In between the two, you're gonna have everything you need to replicate this on a smaller or even a bigger scale. And you're gonna be able to grow not just things like I am, like lettuces, herbs, spices, microgreens. I've even grown fruit in here, but really anything that you want. And if I deliver, like this video, share it with someone who will enjoy it, and let's get started. Now, before we get into the build, there's 2 things we need to cover. The first are other options available to you instead of what I'm going to show you. In fact, some of you might already be thinking about, well, why not a grow tent? Now, the first reason why I do not like grow tents is because they come in limited sizes. Even a large 8 by 8 foot grow tent, for example, only has 64 square feet, whereas this room is more than double that. Secondly, they only come in a square, which may not always be ideal for the space you have that you want to turn into a grow room. I'm going to teach you how to customize a room, which could be in all different shapes, sizes, and you could get really as creative as you want. Grow tents are also notorious for needing CO2 pumped into them for plants to actually grow well. What I'm going to show you does not need CO2. In this grow room, I have never supplemented CO2. And lastly, and this applies especially if you want to do something a little bit bigger, grow tents are not going to be as cost effective as what I'm going to show you. If you had 120 square feet you wanted to turn into a grow space, well, what I'm going to show you is going to do it at like 1/4 the cost. And you can take the rest of that money and spend it on the other things that you'll eventually need, right? Like growing racks or aeroponic towers or lights, seeds, etc. Now, the second thing I really want you to know before I get into how to build this space is why. I'm going to show you step by step how to build this, but when you understand why and the basic science behind it, you're going to be in a way better place to execute on it. You see, the scientific name for an indoor farm is a controlled environment agriculture. And in agriculture is essentially the art or practice of cultivating plants. So an indoor farm in a nutshell is a place you're growing plants where the environment is controlled. Outside, it's not controlled, right? You're at the mercy of nature to give you the right temperature, humidity. This is why you typically can only grow things in certain seasons. Many farms are dependent upon the clouds for rain. You also have to deal with animals and pests. Where in a controlled agriculture, we get to decide all these things and a lot more. And this is why indoor farming is so cool. By manipulating every aspect of the grow room, we can enhance taste, we can improve nutrition, we can simulate the seasons to bring out particular traits, all while being free of herbicides, pesticides, preservatives, and we can do it year-round. And that is the why behind how we're going to build these grow spaces. It's all about controlling the environment so that we can grow virtually anything we want. And now, let's get into the build. All right, step one is to choose and inspect the room you want to use. Now, the one thing this room must have is a window that goes directly outside. This is why these grow spaces don't need CO2, because all the fresh CO2 filled air they're going to need is going to come from outside through this window. In this grow room, I have a window that's used for my AC unit, as well as a door that goes directly to the outside that I use to help adjust temperatures and humidity. Having an extra window could also help you funnel air out of the house, but if you only have one, that's totally okay. If you don't want to use a window, what I recommend is sealing it off. For example, in this room, the windows I did not want to use, I covered with some plastic that's used to seal a window to keep hot air in during the winter months. This is an older house, so we would be using this during the winter anyways. But this is just going to help prevent any air getting in or out that you don't want. Again, helping us control the environment. Next, you're gonna want this room to have some plugs. If you have one plug, you can make do, but hopefully you have at least two. Now you should just do a top-down review of the room. Look at the condition of the ceiling, walls, and floor. Pay attention to where light switches may be, where outlets may be, if there's any slumps, weak spots, hole pops. Is there anything sticking out of the wall that pictures may have been hanging on? Same thing with the floor. If there's anything sticking off it, protruding from it, nails or something else, you just want to try and get that off. Speaking of floors, ideally a hardwood or some type of vinyl or tile would be best. But if you have carpet, we're going to cover it anyways, so it should be fine as long as we're keeping our humidity under control. I'm paying attention to where my plugs are. I have one there, I have one there. What's that mean in terms of where my lights are going to be? What am I gonna have to need in terms of cords? Because for my hanging lights, I'll probably have to run one up to where the power cord would be for the light I'm gonna hang here. And maybe I'll need one to run down in this way, and then I can run it up like this. Like this is just what you have to think about, right? What I wanna do is put a table here, one level, and start growing flowers on top of that. So I'm gonna have to suspend a light from there. So that's what I'm thinking about in terms of this room. So once you've found and chosen a great room, now it's time to move on to step two, which is to cover the walls and floor in a reflective, waterproof Mylar. This Mylar is going to optimize the grow room for maximum light absorption. It's going to help your plants make use of all the light that's in this room. It's also going to waterproof the walls and floor. And for a more in-depth look on protecting your grow room from water, check out this video. The reflective Mylar I get comes in these large 4 by 100 foot rolls. And with some help, it's fairly easy to begin wrapping this around the walls. Now the way I've done this, which helped a lot, was by taking 1 by 2 inch by 8 foot boards and pinning the reflective Mylar in the corners with it. I'm taking screws and some washers and I'm just screwing it in. And we pin the Mylar to the wall that way, in all the corners. We're gonna do it in all the corners, around the door, and around here. The way I did it with my friend is that one of us would just pull the Mylar tight and then the other would pin it and drill it in. In any loose parts on the wall, I would just pull to make tension and then screw in with a washer to hold it tight. And for my walls, it's created a really nice finish. Keep in mind if you have any closets or doorways or other things in the room that you may need to measure and cut around. Something I had to do in this grow space was it has an old water radiator and I didn't want to put the Mylar directly against it, so I built a small wood frame out from the wall that I could just stretch the Mylar across, keeping it off it. These walls have high ceilings, so it took 2 long strips. I started at the top and then we do the lower section. If your room has lower ceilings, it's no big deal. You're just gonna have to chop that to a thinner width. But keep in mind, you may want some extra length at the bottom because the way I do the floors is that I'll stretch out the strips and then I'll tuck in under the flap on the wall. I then go through with some reflective tape. I'm covering things up, I'm sealing off lines, and in the end, I think it has a really nice glowing finish. Honestly, these rooms look incredible. All right, now that we have all the walls done and the floor, I'm gonna come through with this reflective tape and seal up everything. All these lines on the wall, I'm gonna cover these pieces of wood, and I'm gonna take all these lines out and seal them together. Now it's time to move on to step 3. And what we're gonna do now is something hopefully you've already been thinking about this whole time, which is to envision how and where you wanna put your grow systems. You do need to think about what type of growing systems you want. I'm using aeroponic towers, I'm using racks. In this new grow room upstairs, I've actually just set up a table that I'm growing some flowers on. Be sure to subscribe to see some of my other videos coming out soon about all the different types of growing systems and which you could choose and why. But for now, as long as you're keeping that in mind, that's gonna help you thinking about how you're going to eventually place your lights and how you're gonna place your racks if you're gonna use those, or your towers. Something to keep in mind about however you choose to grow, let's say that you have a rack, you're also gonna have fans on that rack, you're gonna have lights on that rack, and so you need to build it in a way where you know how the cords are going to be connected, to what outlet are they going to go. You have to think about high traffic areas. Do you want to step over cords or irrigation lines? Your entire space should be built so that it runs smooth, you have good, easy access, things aren't in your way, you're not getting tripped up over stuff, and maybe you might want to add some tables. I have 2 tables, one that my gravity tank sits on that feeds water to the towers, and the second sits right next to my microgreen racks that I use for harvesting and packaging. I found this awesome seller on Amazon that has a wide range of sizes of stainless steel commercial grade tables. This one's like 1.5 feet wide, like 9 feet long. It sits right next to this rack and just looks and feels great. I have really good access to the microgreen trays so I can just pull them off and harvest. It works really well, and that's also something you may want to have in your room, so keep that in mind as you build this as well. One cool customization in this room, because I'm just growing on this table right here, I have all this empty space. I thought, well, I'd like to enclose this in if I ever want to. So I made a reflective Mylar wall, and I installed a hook on the top, used some fish wire so that I can hang a cover right here. I also did this in my larger grow room. Now, once you've finished hanging your lights, building your grow systems, adding any tables, now it's time to add the finishing pieces of technology that are gonna help you control this grow space. And that's gonna be a portable temperature and humidity reader, an AC unit, and a dehumidifier. All right, the grow room is almost complete. Now what I need to do is add some temperature and humidity monitors throughout the room. I'm gonna put these around the center of the wall, spread out evenly in a place easy to see. If you put it high up to the ceiling, it's always gonna be hotter because hot air rises. If you put it close to the floor, it's always gonna be cooler. So you want a good average temperature that's in the same general space as the plants are going to be in the room. And this is gonna be crucial for getting a reading so that you can adjust the environment to the ideal conditions for whatever it is you're growing. These ones that I have here are nice because I got that magnet on the back. I'm gonna change that to Fahrenheit, and I'm gonna be able to put that right there. So I have one there and on the other side of the room. Both sides of the room are around equal height. It's gonna give me a good insight into the temperature and humidity of the room. All right, it is officially time to finish this room. It's getting a little hot in here. The humidity seems okay, but I'm gonna go ahead and install the last 2 things that I need to complete this grow room, which is an AC unit and a dehumidifier. Now, some extra things I want to add to the section, which depending on your setup, you don't really need, but I use and I'd recommend because it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. And that's going to be your use of tanks, pumps, and hoses. I actually purify all the water used in this room through 5-stage reverse osmosis. I then pump that into a storage tank, which is actually in my kitchen, and then I pump it from the kitchen into this room that splits between 2 tanks. One of them is the gravity tank, which feeds the towers, and the second sits on top of one of my racks and that water is for the microgreens. Running water lines into the grow room is going to make your life a lot more convenient. And using these Y-split adapters is crucial because you can guide water to places that you need it. I've even used one on the gravity tank to split the water that would go into it out into a separate handheld hose. So I can fill these towers up manually, and I actually do that a lot. That said, the tank that I have for the microgreens goes down into a pump that is self-priming, and I have that pump plugged into an outlet using a Vaunt smart plug. These have an app that you can turn them on and off remotely, which is nice, but they also have a button on the side that you can just press and turn it on, and that's what I do before I'm watering, and when I'm done, I turn it off. All these tanks also have valves that I'm always shutting when I'm not in the room to prevent the possibility some line breaks and they could just drain out. But the hoses that I've used, the pumps that I have used are phenomenal. These pumps, I own a few of them. One of them had an issue. I contacted the manufacturer. They sent me out replacements really quickly. Like the company I've been really pleased with, not just the product. They come with all the adapters, a filter. They just work really well, and I'm so confident recommending them to you. And again, I have links to everything that I use, the pumps, the tanks, the valves, the splits, everything in the description. Now the last thing in this section are indeed fans. It's important to have fans in your grow room for a variety of reasons. I actually just dropped an ultimate guide on grow fans that you can check out here. And once you have finished adding all of these things, you're happy with it, it looks great, you are officially done. You have an awesome grow space that now you can control and grow almost anything you want inside. And now what I want to do is share with you how to generally maintain this new indoor farm. There are 3 key things you need to control in your grow space. The first is your temperature, which is how hot or cold it is. The second is your humidity, that's how much water or moisture is in the air. And the last is your lighting cycles. Generally speaking, you're gonna want your grow room between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. You're gonna want a humidity between 40% and 60%. And your light cycle is usually around 16 on and 8 off. The way this works is that generally every day you're stepping into your grow room and you're looking at those digital temperature and humidity readers and you're taking a reading. What are they at? For example, if the temperature is too high, you could turn your AC up. If the temperature is too low, you could turn your AC down. If the humidity is high, maybe you're gonna switch your dehumidifier to its highest setting. Or if the humidity is too low, maybe you just turn it off. These things matter, but it's not just these things. Because we're working with a window or door to the direct outside, we're also going to be working with the seasons. And by this, I mainly mean, is it hotter or colder outside than it is inside your grow room? You can also adjust your humidity and your temperature by how much you're cracking your window, allowing some of the hot air to escape and fresh air to come in. For example, towards the end of winter into spring, with all these lights, it'll actually be hotter in here than it will be outside. Whereas in the summertime, even with all the lights, it's still far hotter outside than it is inside. So I may only be using the AC, or I'm not cracking my windows as much. Hot air moves towards cold air, so I may have the window vented more. I may open the door a little bit more. I'm also doing this from the door that connects the grow room to the rest of the house. These are things that you adjust and feel out as you learn to grow in the grow room. I also use a handheld tool, which I can take around the room and read the temperature, the humidity, and as you're getting these readings, you're adjusting, you're experimenting with all the tools available to you to get the grow room to the exact condition that you want. Another aspect of maintenance that I think is important is also the cleanliness of your grow space. I am frequently sweeping or mopping or wiping down tables, cleaning the tops of lights. Sometimes there's gnats and I'll have fly catchers and I'm replacing those. You obviously want to keep your room clean because you're growing food that you're going to eat or that you might be selling. And so I just think that's something I also want to put in here is that this does take cleanup maintenance, and that's something you should stay on top of. And that pretty much covers it. That's how I built this indoor farm, and I hope this video has inspired you and will help you if you'd like to build a custom grow space as well. And if you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments and join my new indoor farming support group on Facebook. Like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.